Hi, Dr. Carly. Welcome to the Genetic Genius podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you as a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Lulu. I'm so thrilled to be here with you again.
It's fun to have totally. It's fun to have the tables turn since you interviewed me a few weeks ago. It's nice to be able to hear the other side of the conversation or expand our conversation. Awesome. Before we get started, I really would love for you to share your fascinating story with our listeners, because I think that it really sets the stage for a lot of things that we're going to talk about today.
Oh, absolutely. I like to say that I came out of the gate or nearly out of the gate with a disposition that's going to put me on the road to discovering everything about health and healing. So the nutshell version of a 36-year and counting health journey is that when I was 7 months old, I contracted bacterial meningitis. And for those of your listeners who may not be familiar, it's a spinal meningitis. It inflames your central nervous system. And at least in the 1980s, bacterial meningitis had about a 5% chance of survival. So lucky me, I am here. I had all of the most amazing emergency care that I could hope for at Colorado Children's Hospital, but it did leave me with quite a bit of invisible handicaps, what I now know to call symptoms from a traumatic brain injury. So coming right out of the gate, I had severe hearing loss. I was deaf in both of my ears. That settled down to just being deaf in my left ear, which was functionally deaf for all my childhood and adolescence. And then I had more insidious things that creeped up on me, which were essentially movement disorders. I had damage in the motor and sensory parts of my brain, as well as the cerebellum, which is where we have coordination for our movement. And so at 7 months old, I needed to learn to hold my own head again and sit up again. And I didn't learn to walk until I think I was nearly 2 years old. And from there, I always had a drunken gate to me. I was never quite stable, always about 2 drinks ahead of my peers. And, in kindergarten, that's saying a lot. But I was never very stable. And all of this to my traditional medical community and treatment was good enough. I compensated well. I got through the world. I was no longer falling over as dramatically as I was in my infancy. We're good to go. And that was the long and the short of it. That was not going to be good enough for me. It wasn't going to be good enough for my parents. And so thus began the decades long journey, which has actually left me with no handicaps to speak of. As of last summer, I did have a re-injury this fall, so I'm working through things again, but I was able to heal all of these unhealable things in my life.
Wow, that's an amazing story, and it shows the power of healing, right? Yeah.
No, I don't think we give our bodies enough credit for the resiliency and change that they're capable of when we give them the tools and the right guidance. It's one thing to manage a symptom, and it's another to really dig down to the root of where a problem.
So true, 100%. And we're going to dive deep into learning and talking about that a lot today in our discussion, because I think that's so important for listeners to understand what the road of health looks like, which of course is individualized, but idealized as well, I think, or not thought about, either one.
Absolutely. I think that we aren't often taught whose responsibility is our health and what is our own responsibility to our health and our body. And that's really what I have come to learn and teach a lot about in my own practice as well.
That's great. And you're now a chiropractor, that's right?
Yes, so I have a private chiropractic practice in Denver. I specialize with biomechanical and neurological movement rehab.
Wow, that's amazing. I love chiropractic care. Is one of I thought about going to a chiropractic school. I was on the fence. What am I going to do? Am I going to do chiropractic school, naturopathic medicine? But naturopathic medicine was the final. I'm still learning all the time, but it was the final decision for the last huge degree. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At some point, we just have to draw the line.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's it.
Yep.
So I think a great segue for what you were just talking about is like sustainable patterns of health and how listeners can really create that realistic vision for their health based on what they have. Like you had a long life of growing up when you had this kind of vision, and how even with your own story, how you were able to hold that vision of being who you are now. What does that look like in creating that sustainable health pattern?
And sustainability is really the key word there. I think so often, and not just in health, but in the way that we do life these days, is that there is a really big jump off the diving board, go into the deep end, and hope that you land in a place that you can stay. And that does not work into sustainability. I had big wild dreams of movement and being on trapeze and silks and these crazy ideas when I was a kid who was being told to reconsider my priorities when I couldn't even sashay in a straight line in 5-year-old dance class.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been unreasonable for me to think, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and be a Cirque du Soleil performer at 5. There's a lot of levels of unreasonable there. It would have been unreasonable to want to dive into that deep end. And yet at the same time, we have to hold this tightrope of accepting where we are and also accepting that's not where we want to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to make slow, deliberate choices in pursuit of our health. And along that way, at least for me, I started to learn that health is not a destination, but the means by which
So true.
there were a lot of times when I had reached an acceptable level of health for where I was at. It's not where I wanted to go or where I ultimately wanted to be, but it was good enough for where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed me to add more resilience and healing to my body, to my brain, to myself, so that I could continue in an upward trajectory. So it is holding this fine line of knowing yourself and your needs, really intimate.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I really like how you talk about you can go beyond even what your vision might be for yourself. And I think that's such a true place that we hold for our patients, because sometimes they can't see the vision that we can see for them and helping them kind of fine tune that as they move along. And of course, it totally can change at the drop of a hat, but having someone else also hold the vision, I think, is a big part of helping have that sustainability, because it's okay, look, you could be here. How can we get you to here? Then you're here. How can we get you to the next place?
Absolutely. And my heart really goes out to a lot of my patients and often to myself empathetically, is that it can be really terrifying to hope to be someplace different than you are. And when you're stuck in a chronic disease state, dealing with invisible handicaps or visible handicaps, however it may be, there is a level of acceptance to where you're at. That there are so many accommodations and so many things you need to do to just get through the day in that particular state, that daring to hope that you could set all that down, set down the emotional labor of dealing with your day-to-day reality now. It doesn't, I think, make as much sense from an outsider opinion, but it's terrifying because it's so much to hope for. What if you don't get it? And what if you have to go back to picking up that heavy backpack of compensation you've been carrying around with you? So having someone willing to hold that light for you and hold that hope for you until you get close enough to see it yourself it's medicine in and of itself.
Right. Yeah. So true. When I love that kind of that analogy of holding the backpack. Right. Because it's true.
Yeah.
It's like we put everything in that backpack. It's like our baggage that we carry.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people just can't set down.
Exactly. Yeah. And I talk a lot about that with my patients too, that trauma backpack or that old baggage, what we fill it with, is it serving us? What can we take out something, put something new in it to help that shift happen?
Absolutely. And so some of it is also look at what are the habits that we have developed over the years. So for my own story, I had a lot of movement disorders, like I mentioned, but the hearing loss became one of the really big pieces that I had to carry with me. Nobody could sit on my left side. They did not exist to me if they were sitting on my left side. Going and socializing in cafeterias and gymnasiums and places like that were just out of the question. I couldn't hear anything. And I would also end up in a sensory overload, which would numb my brain and make it even harder for me to engage in the world around me. So on the one hand, that became a very smart strategy to help get me through high school years, particularly when those are the places that you go. But they also became a habit. And so knowing when it's safe to set that piece down, when my hearing ultimately did return, there's a behavioral component as well of just feeling comfortable, like, I'm going to try to go to a cafeteria or a noisy place of restaurant like a cafeteria and try this on But there
Mm-hmm.
are so many different layers to how we unpack our backpack. And we have to be gentle with ourselves. We get really comfortable in our current level of health. And we see that same thing when people lose their health. It's very hard to add things to those backpacks. We are creatures of habits, and working with someone who can help us examine what we need and what it starts to feel safe to put down and put that emotional labor into moving through can be such an empowering place to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how we create different fears or protection layers around different aspects of our health.
Absolutely.
Do you think that the vision like of media, magazines, different things that we have out in the world of what the perfect health looks like are altering what the psyche of our patients, the way that they are they're trying to get to this specific perfect vision of health all the time?
Yeah, just a lot of it. We aspire to what we see in the media and what is often portrayed. And we start to see this changing a little bit, but it is this very sweeping generalization of what ableism in a perfect body ought to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it gives us the ideal that, particularly when we look at things like Instagram or even media imaging and magazines and what have you, that this is a snapshot in time.
Right.
This is a snapshot in time where this person has the perfect ripped muscles and abs and an able body, and they're looking bright and coiffed and all put together. And I think it gives us the idea that we are supposed to arrive at this perfection and stay there
For eternity, like a Greek god
for
or
eternity.
something.
Just this glossy page in a magazine, just going
Mm-hmm.
nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of it is that doesn't leave room for this sort of more realistic homeostasis approach to health.
Mm-hmm.
We are meant to be stressed, hopefully just to the edge, but stressed to the edge of what we can handle. This is called hormesis. This is a healthy way in which our body takes stock of how strong we are. And are there cells or systems that aren't up to snuff that need an overhaul and shedding so that thin the herd a little bit? And then we have that peak of health where we can excel and grow. We aren't going to always exist up there because counterintuitively, that in and of itself is not healthy. Because without a stressor to our body will actually become weaker over time. Exactly. So we do need to think of health more as a range than a pinpoint, so that we also don't get neurotically fixated on I'm bloating today, I'm dehydrated, I didn't drink enough water, I didn't do things perfectly today, everything's going to fall apart. Your body will give you more grace than that.
Mm-hmm. I like that what you just said about that fixation, because I think that's an aspect that patients often, especially in that chronic disease state, they get fixated on where they are in that moment in time. Like you mentioned, it's like you can either be in that moment in time of health and a distant moment, or you can be in that chronic disease state, which could be a longer moment in time. Both of them could be, but then how can you shift that fixation stage? So if you're like fixated, just, I don't know what a good example that is, but if you're fixated, how can you shift out of the fixation?
I think looking at this idea of, again, is it this moment in time? And often I would bring myself back to what is in my control. If I am having a good moment, a good health day, a good cascade there, what is in my control is to enjoy that and to make sure that I am doing what I can to stay above it. But I like to think of it as having a little extra money to spare, that I get to play a little bit more and engage with where I am. Now, it's harder. I think if you are used to being in a disease state, it's harder to be playful when you're healthy. Sometimes. And I think that takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of grace for yourself. So that's also something that's in our control, is to offer that grace. But then when it comes to being in a disease state, in that chronic space, is, there is that level of accepting where we are on that homeostasis wave, that today I can only get so much better than I am currently right now. That health is a slow trajectory, and I am on my way there. I am on my way out of this disease state to the best of my ability, whatever it is. And today, what can I do? And if what I can do is make sure I'm drinking my water and make sure I'm taking my supplements and make sure I go to bed at a reasonable hour and I move, that's it. And then we have to let it go. And then we have to exist in the space in the world that we are in. because when it comes down to it, I'm not taking my supplements every 5 minutes. I am making sure I do it so I can go back and engage in my world.
Exactly. Yeah. Having those foundations are so key. And I also liked what you said about you're like setting something that's a realistic goal and that's small and attainable, because those small little steps then can guide you into, like, in the end, they create a bigger onion, a bigger piece of that puzzle that you're creating for yourself. When am I going to get to put that last piece in?
Exactly. It's just like climbing a mountain.
Right.
That's a metaphor that I look at here. I mean, here in Borges, Colorado, I have this great view of the Rocky Mountains. And if you were to take a look at Pikes Peak, take a look at any of our 14ers, say, I'm going to be right up there. I'm going to get to the top of that mountain. Well, you don't just get to snap your fingers and show up there. You take that one step at a time, and it is, ask anybody who's climbed one, it can be a really grueling experience. And there's switchbacks and there's false summits, and you start wondering if you brought enough water and enough snacks. And then there's a storm cloud rolling in and you have to retreat back down so you don't get hit by lightning, because that's going to be really detrimental to your healing journey. And all of these things really show up in our own journey of health. It doesn't get to be a straight line. And when you think you've arrived, sometimes we've just uncovered another layer of dysfunction, more foundational, that's going to support you. But all of these things are in pursuit of arriving at that top of that mountain.
Yeah, I love that analogy, climbing the mountain, because it's true. We have this dream, this vision of becoming the person that can climb that mountain, that gets to put the flag on top of our own mountain and claim it. So when we're on this road of healing, this like climbing the mountain, I think you talked about the easiness, the difficulty of it. Does it have to be an uncomfortable place to be in to have this shift to happen? Can it be this road of like joy and health? I feel like some people think, oh God, if I have to get healthy, it's going to be such a pain. Like, you're going to make me give up everything that I enjoy, and I'm going to have to, I don't change my whole life. What do you think about that?
I think that does get a really bad rap, that getting healthy is such a chore. And I get that comment quite a bit, is, wow, you're just so diligent. You do so much work. And the gift about only having lived with chronic dysfunction is that I really don't know any other way. Either I'm going to make good choices or I'm going to be a non-functioning member of society. So yeah, I guess I'm doing the hard work. I'm making good choices. It's about mindset to me. So if we take this illusion, this metaphor of climbing the mountain, if someone is dragging you up the mountain, you don't want to be on the mountain. You don't want to go there.
Right.
Every single step is gonna suck. Your boots are gonna be too tight. Your backpack's gonna be too heavy. It's too long to get there. The weather isn't going to be right. If you haven't made that choice to commit to getting to it, yeah, it's gonna be miserable. If you don't want to change your diet, it's gonna be a terrible time for you. If you don't want to work on your sleep hygiene, you're gonna feel like someone is putting you to bed before your bedtime. But if we take the time to ask ourselves, who is really responsible for my health? And what does my health mean to me? Then we start to make those choices from an informed point of view. When it comes down to it, you're the only person responsible for your health. You're the only person who is going to be able to make the changes and make the commitment to change the state and health of your body, mind, or spirit, wherever you're working. Everything else that is outside of you is disease management, symptom management. It doesn't actually change your health. It changes your experience of your body and the discomforting things it's telling you. Once you make the decision that where you want to be, that summit is worth it to you, I don't think there's anything easier in the world. There are emotional triggers, there are social triggers, there are behavioral triggers. This is learning a new way of being, and learning things is hard, but it doesn't have to be a miserable slog through restriction and punishment.
Yeah, exactly. So true. You said it exactly the way that I think about it too. It's, I think that mindset piece is so important when it comes to, especially the way that we work with patients from that alternative perspective, because everything is so quick. We live in this quick society. And I think people unfortunately, have gotten tuned into the quick fix for their health. And I think now there's a lot of relearning that's happening, especially from that chronic disease state. They can tell that it's going to be different things that are going to have to be shifted. It's not going to be a quick fix, because they probably have had it for a long time.
Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
completely changing expectations about what is going on. We have over the years conflated so many terms. We have mistaken symptom management for a cure. If your blood sugar is under control, you no longer are dealing with diabetes. Of course, you're still dealing with diabetes. Your
Right.
body is still diabetic. Your blood sugar is just under control from an external point. Same, it would be the same thing if I put in a hearing aid. I'm still hearing impaired. I just have an aid to help me get through my day in good form. So we have to start relearning what healing is and the story we're being told about can we heal. For
Mhm.
decades, and I think still in many places, we can't say that we can reverse diabetes. This is an uncurable disease. We have cultural givens and expectations about the permanency of chronic disease.
Mhm.
But those cultural givens come from a system that seek to manage symptoms rather than change the original dysfunction. Of course, they're not curable in only managing symptoms, but it doesn't mean they're not curable or reversible or more manageable.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that's again with that mindset piece about that's a cultural mindset. And I
Mhm.
think that where we live in the United States, I think it's a huge cultural concept of how we manage our healthcare, how we broken our healthcare system is, and the way that we're trying to, it's a disease state, right? Not a wellness state, which is unfortunate,
Mhm.
but we're working on it slowly. It's changing. Thank God.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. It just takes, it's going to take a little time, I think, to reverse the, I don't know, the
Mhm.
damage. It's not permanent, like you said, but it is part of, it's part of the damage that we've seen, we're still seeing what it's done
Mhm.
to the healthcare of our families and friends and community.
Mhm. Yeah, this approach to healthcare has resulted in the next generation being, I think it might be the Generation Z, having a life expectancy that is shorter than the generation before them. We are the most unhealthy country on the planet, and arguably in written history when it comes to the state of our chronic disease. When we think that what we eat and how we move and how we rest and how we engage in community doesn't matter as part of our health starts to deteriorate it. And we're seeing this with younger and younger kiddos being on pharmaceutical intervention for diseases and dysfunctions that were once thought to belong to adults. And before that was thought to belong to the elderly alone.
Yeah, that's so true. And so fascinating. I think what you mentioned too about the younger generation. I've seen so many
Mhm.
more of patients in a younger age with autoimmune disease. And I think that is something we didn't see, especially in women.
Mhm.
So then we have to, from that doctor standpoint, we have to take the detective glasses and put them on and be like, okay, so what's happening here? Why are we having
Mhm.
this shift with our patients? And how can we help reverse that permanently? And so that we can be on that different trajectory, like you were mentioning.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing the same thing. I'm having younger and younger patients, adolescents come in with low back pain and knee pain and neck pain and headaches that typically belong to my 9 to 5ers at a desk.
Mhm.
And when kids aren't being asked to get outside and move, they're not engaging their core. They're not learning balance and strength. And even though this sitting is what many of us do all day, it requires a great deal of strength and coordination to do it. And without that, without moving and changing the way our body is engaged in the world, it gets harder and harder. And I'm treating 10, 12-year olds with migraines and chronic backaches. It's not because our bodies are getting necessarily weaker or made of cheaper materials. It's what is our
Right.
environment doing to encourage this?
Yes. I think the crux with that is like technology, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. And
yeah.
and canceling
I
canceling
know.
resources, shutting down playgrounds.
Oh, so sad. I know. I used to spend so much time outside and when I was a kid, and that's all I did. And when I was, as soon as I'd wake up, I would like sneak downstairs and watch a little cartoon. I was like allowed to like watch an hour of cartoons. So I'd watch cartoons and then I'd be outside in my tree house in my garden, playing in the with my friends in the neighborhood. And I feel like I don't see hardly any of that anymore. And it's really interesting. I think that we'll see a shift in that. I want to talk about that more with you too as we have some other fun topics that we'll move into. Okay, so we're talking about the shift, this like uncomfortable shift that you can be in, and it sounds like that it's part of that journey. Part of what patients experience, and when you're being in that uncomfortable place, is part of the healing journey. And maybe loving it and acknowledging it might be key.
Yeah, I think if we can bring some curiosity to healing, again, we have this false dichotomy. Either we are going to magically be symptom free, or you are going to be suffering in the cruel bowels of whatever thing you're not managing the symptoms of. In reality, we have a lot of different sensations that we can experience within our body. And we can have productive pain, we can have productive discomfort, and we can have destructive pain and destructive discomfort. And the goal is to move from that destructive arena along a constructive change onto a new plateau or a new arena of health. So oftentimes healing can be uncomfortable, but I want to be very clear. Uncomfortable is not the same thing as painful, and it's not the same thing as destructive. It is just something new and different that we have to learn to engage with. So a really recent example that I got to experience of extreme discomfort, but amazing curiosity, was after 36 years of hearing impairment, my left ear, turns out my hearing impairment was entirely, we have this little tube where sound travels and we have little nerves that go around it. And essentially the musculature, because of my neurological postural scoliosis type things, was putting a kink in the hole. Somebody was standing on my ear canal for 36 years. I just didn't hear anything. So I had been receiving some treatments and got the kink out of the holes, and my ear opened.
Wow.
I could hear. And that is incredible. And you see videos strewn across YouTubes of kiddos getting cochlear implants, and it is an emotional thing to experience, and it's an emotional thing to behold. And it is that because our hearing is processed in the emotional portion of our brain, in our hypothalamus. So all of the sudden, I was getting sound waves and input into this part of my brain from this half of my brain, and the brain's kind of bisected. That's a whole nother conversation. But I was getting input that I had never gotten to my brain since I was 7 months old.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was amazing, and it was overwhelming.
Scary.
And scary, yeah. I was hearing things and sobbing and crying and laughing uncontrollably. And at the time I had a 4-year-old, and I was just looking, I was like, we are learning to process emotions at kind of the same level right now. This is new to you. This is new to me. We're going to get through this together, as we're both like sobbing on the floor because we ran out of our favorite chips or something like that. It was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to be a, 35-year-old woman who's like crying irrationally over something that upsets a 4-year-old. It's not bad. And it was a very key and crucial part to my healing journey to learn to temper and deal with those emotions, because we can go further down the line that those emotions are part of our limbic system. And that's going to change the way I feel hunger and the way I feel stress and the way that I can engage in the world. All of those pieces were an important relearning to my neurology. It was fascinating. And if I could engage with it in curiosity, then that's something to learn and be excited about. But if I just think, hey, that's different, I don't like it, I want to touch it, well, you can see how our perspective really changes what healing looks like.
Yeah, so true. And being open to that healing experience, because it can look different for everybody. And I think, like you said, it can be that scary place of uncomfortability, of being uncomfortable. But when we embrace it in a way to help us learn and to help, like you said, with your daughter, what a great example of helping the people around us to learn how to laugh at ourselves. Yeah, this is just part of what's going on right now.
It's just a really beautiful commercial, and I'm just going to sob through it. But it brings us up to vulnerability, and a really crucial part of healing that I know we touched on a little bit at the beginning about having a provider that helps hold that hope and helps guide you through it. But community is almost a non-negotiable to me, that being supported in this place of change as you are witnessing yourself differently and being vulnerable with those around you. If we can't be vulnerable with our partners, with our children, with our family and friends about the changes that we are going through, it's going to be very hard for them and for us to sit together on the other side of it. There's a group commitment that kind of comes out of that.
Yeah. And that is about the support we need too from our community and that aspect where when we are trying to heal on our own environment, when we're doing like the healing journey ourselves, it's totally different when we have somebody helping us, whether that's our family, like you said, or healing practitioner. That piece of having that person help us is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And we need that when we are trying to take on so much. If it's overhauling a diet in how we feed ourselves, and sometimes we need that family buy-in for what is in the kitchen and what is not in the kitchen anymore. If it's
Right.
about if it's about getting out and moving more, then if we're in a couch potato family, maybe we all get out and go for a walk so that we can
Mhm.
still enjoy time together, but do it in a way that is helpful for everybody. Our health is really predicated by the behaviors of those that are around us and that support as well. There's been a lot of interesting studies saying that we hear that we are the composite of the 5 people closest to us, but that goes as far as to dealing with overall health and weight, immune
Mhm.
support and function, movement, how our optimism or pessimism, we really do exist within the community at our best or at our worst, as the case may be.
Right. Yes. We decide how we want to show up in the world. That's true. With your chiropractic work that you do and you work on the nervous system, how do you assist patients in choosing to be more open to that healing from that chiropractic perspective? Do you do certain techniques, or are there certain, ways you help move the body to help them be more open and have that shift to happen?
Absolutely. I start with really foundational small changes. And it's the same way I look at my own health and encouragement across the board is that just like we're talking about not ending up at the top of the mountain, you are not going to go from back pain to heavy dead weight or deadlifting and squats. That just got all mixed up in my mouth right away.
Yeah.
We have to assist your body in learning how to do things differently. Our brain is brilliant. It is brilliant at doing workarounds and compensations. It wants us to be upright in pursuit of food. And whether or not we're in pain is a little immaterial. I mean,
Mhm.
if we can exist and function, pain, we can smudge things, we can dull pain. It's fine. It's fine. We'll just keep going.
Right.
So, when we want to learn to do something different, we have to break it down to a small enough component that we give the brain an opportunity to learn things at a very foundational level differently.
Mhm.
So, if any of you are around little kiddos, little babies learning to crawl, they don't just pop up on their hands. That crawl starts with slowly lifting their head. That crawl looks like just moving your arm. And I break our movements down just as small. Often it's about, are you engaging your front core? Do
Mhm.
you know where your belly is and how to use those muscles? Because until we give your brain absolutely nothing to do except engage isometrically, just clench and hold this one muscle until your brain knows where it left it, you can do as many of the fancy PT movements and the handout packets everywhere,
Right.
and will never use the muscle you never learned to use.
Mhm.
So we have to start very small and incremental, and very quickly things build. Those first couple of visits tend to be very tedious. The movements are so small, people can't imagine that these are actually exercises. But once we get through the first week or two and start building strength, then we layer on it very quickly, and it's
Mhm.
all builds with steam from there.
Nice. Oh, that's great. And I do that analogy too of, so we're building on these building blocks within our body. And sometimes we forget how to use a specific part of our
Mhm.
body, whether that's from, we weren't ever taught how to use it, like you said, or even we use it for a while and we put it on the shelf and we're like, well, okay, I got to dust that back off and use it again.
Yeah. Yeah, we are meant to be very efficient. If you are sitting all of the time, your big butt muscles, your glutes, which are meant to extend your legs, don't extend your legs because they're flexed. You're sitting, they're cushy. We're good.
Right.
And so we stop running the neurological cable to get
Mhm.
them to fire as strong, as efficiently, as quickly in favor of other muscles that need to take up that energy in that brain space, which might be our fingers on the keyboard.
Right. Yeah.
Or our hip flexors that become tighter and tighter to help hold us in this position. So it's really a re-education program right
Mhm.
from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think that's true for all aspects of our health. We have our physical body, our emotional and spiritual body. We always have to re-educate ourselves or relearn something or learn something new to propel us to, like we were talking about earlier, into that new state of health. I remember when I was in medical school at Bastyr University, we had these really old chairs in the auditorium. They were so bad. And I couldn't reach the floor very well. And I'm really short. I'm only 5 feet tall. And I started having this like really bad back pain. And I'm like, I never had back pain. I'm super athletic. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And so I went to the free clinic where all the students work. And I went to the physical medicine department and we talked through things. And finally we're like, how about you start putting some like books under your feet to really help elevate? And that helped everything for me because I had to sit for hours listening to lectures, which I loved and hated.
You're getting pain, not as much fun.
Yeah.
It all comes down to simple medicine. For me, I love having nutraceuticals. I love having supplements and things like that make it easier to get components of nutrition into our body if we're missing it, particularly if we're in a disease state that, say, have an intestinal flare and we don't get our B vitamins. Here's a really easy way to just dump a bunch of B vitamins in without having to be too heroic in our diets. But even advanced technology, nutraceuticals, still boil itself down to the simplest things, that there's nothing new under the sun. Now, do you have the right building blocks? Are your feet supported under you, or are you basically free hanging for 8 hours at a time and expecting your back not to get tired? And the simple medicine is stop free hanging.
Right, exactly.
Support your body.
Listen to your body. Hello.
Listen to your body. And the answers that I think those of us in the alternative healthcare world give are very much getting back to the basics of what do you need to learn to do again so that you can understand what your body needs and meet.
Yeah. And sometimes that's so simple and we forget the simplicity of things, I think.
Yeah, it's too simple to work.
Right. Yeah, that's not going to work. No way.
Yeah.
We're talking about chiropractic care, and you're working with patients to relearn this part of their body or rediscover. And how does that then affect the DNA, the communication between the cells? Does it create these new pathways or open up new pathways of communication?
So I like to think of it as it runs old pathways fresh, that if we haven't been using these muscles, if we hadn't been using these movements, these pathways don't entirely shrivel away and die.
Right. Yeah.
But we do have what is called neuroplasticity. And we used to think that we could only develop new neurons and new brainwaves. Grand, old theory was that we were born with all we were going to get.
Right.
And that's it. You're good. Hope you got everything you need there. Then we thought until about 27, when the frontal lobe finishes developing. And now we know that we can establish neuroplasticity throughout our life. There is no end to it. And it's really very quick how your brain is going to move and adapt to bring this up. There was a research study out of Stanford, and my apologies for those who don't like animal studies, but ultimately the monkeys were okay. But they had monkeys, and they looked at the motor movement of the monkeys in their brain. And they saw that we have this thing called a homunculus, which is basically the representation of how much space different muscles take up in our brain. And the hands take up a lot of space. There's a lot of sensory, there's a lot of fine motor movement, and each finger was represented very fully. Then they stitched the two fingers of the monkeys together. So now they were down a finger, essentially. They had one large finger instead of two. And over a very short period of time, the brain smudged that part of the brain, part of where the muscle control was, down to one, because it could only behave together. Well, just as quickly, once we unstitched those fingers, the brain, having to learn how to recalculate and rearticulate these fingers, unsmudged it in the neurology as well.
Wow. And fascinating.
It's amazing. And it happened so quickly. This was over, I believe, over a matter of weeks or months. We're not talking about years and years here. So how we use our body engages in our DNA and our neurology such that we start to use more of it and take up larger brain space, take up larger amounts of energy to drive it. And the really cool thing about the central nervous system and the brain itself is that it develops in stacking with each other. So that the more we move and engage our body, the more we light up this highway system across our brain that helps with coordination. And our coordination feeds right into our ability to focus. And our ability to focus feeds into our ability to express ourselves and to then be emotional. And we start to see all of these pieces come together just by the way in which we move and the way we use our body in the world.
Yeah, that's so true. I was doing this new exercise program that I started this year in 2022, and it was a lot of balancing. And it was like the first, it was a couple repetitive, I think like 3 sets or 3 series of exercises. And I was so amazed by repeating those same movements, and that my body would be like the first time, like, oh my God, I'm going to fall over. And, like, this is not going to happen. It's not going to work out so well. And then by that 3rd set, I was able to really, engage a lot better. I had much more balance, and I felt a lot more comfortable. So it's exactly that same thing you're talking about. It's like our brain is so amazing. It's like people don't even give it enough credit.
And think about all those layers that you just talked about casually. And the way I think is really going to resonate with a lot of our listeners here is that when you did your first set and you were terribly off balance, you felt nervous. You could almost go as far as to say as you felt anxious about the outcome of what you were doing.
Yeah.
And if we haven't been well practiced in our body, we don't know where we are in space because we haven't engaged with it. We don't know where we are. That makes us nervous. That makes us anxious. We can start to see our psychosocial health is also tied up in our ability to engage with our physical body. We can't keep thinking of these things as different aspects. We are all one being, and the one influences the other intimately.
Right. It's all connected in there. The body's not one thing, just like you were saying with the communication of the brain to the rest of the body through our neural pathways. It's like we have so much that we can shift and change. I think we're just like so much on the verge of all of this different aspects of our body being able to come alive, which is another question I wanted to ask you too, which I think is really fun. Okay. So we're at this current state of health right now in this chronic disease, like, I don't know, phase of the planet. And as alternative healthcare practitioners, we have a whole different vision. So what's your vision? What do you see happening in the next 5 years? Because I think we've seen a huge shift, like just in genetics over even just this past year. We're seeing this huge change in how we're learning about the body, how the body works from the inside, how things can shift. And of course, we have so much, our science has changed so much over the past decade. But what do you see? You're like, oh yeah, I could see this happening in the next 5 years. It's really going to change the way that my practice works or the way that my patients are able to do things in the world.
For me, and what I hope it will change in the next 5 years, I don't know if I'm feeling quite that optimistic this morning, but it's not so much about the new technology. We are starting to understand the body very differently. We were able to look at the whole DNA, and now we're learning about epigenetics. We have all these pieces, and the more we know, the more that we can work with it. Right. But what I think we get distracted by is what kind of technology can we use to poke and prod and change. And what I am more interested in changing in the next 5 years is I think we all took a very large leap over the last few years about hoping that our health would be managed for us outside of our body, that there was some way that we could be in the pinnacle of health without engaging in the world around us. And the conversation that most excites me is the one that I'm having more and more often with my patients over the last few months, which is that I guess no one is going to take care of me, and that my health, if I want to be healthy, if I want to come through a stressful period, I've got to take care of myself. I think we are starting to ask different questions, and it's in asking different questions that I think we're going to get different answers from our technology, because when it comes to research, we only answer the question we ask. And so if we can instead say, what can you do to make me feel better? And instead start asking, what can I do to make me feel better? The whole game changes.
Yeah.
And with a healthier population that takes responsibility and knows that food-like substances are not the same thing as food, and carbonated sugar drinks are not in fact water, then we're going to start to change the health of our nation. but thinking that it's going to be someone else's job to do that for us, this is just not going to be a top-down problem that we solve. It needs to start with a revolution of our own expectations.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't take 5 years for that to happen. I love, because I think that's a huge thing that we need to help shift, help our patients see that it comes from the I movement. And I talk to my patients all the time about that when they're starting to see me. I'm like, I'm here to help you and guide you, but I'm not going to the person that makes things happen for you. Right. It's like, you are in charge of your journey. I'm here to guide you, show you different aspects of your journey, show you how you can evolve, how you can shift, how you can make changes, but you're in charge of this ship, not me.
Absolutely. And that's the shift that I want to see in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's totally happening too. I think that's hugely happening, and on a much bigger level too, especially with social media. I think it helps people to see things in a different way too.
And the dissemination of information is so much broader. It allows us to demand different kinds of resources and options. Whereas depending on where we lived, we might only have one doctor and only have the information that doctor learned in their medical school, which may or may not have included any nutrition education.
Right.
At this point, many MDs are only getting 5 to 10 hours. May not have included any.
It's so small when food is such the biggest part of our life.
But I think that lets us start to understand that we are all only human, whether or not we have a doctor in front of our name. We are just experts in what we have learned. Right. And so the dissemination of information through the internet means that now I can go find an expert who has learned what I want to know more about, rather than needing to settle for the scope of what's in front of me. And that becomes really empowering as a patient. Made all the difference for myself as well.
Yeah, so that's so true. There's so much different alternative medicine out there, and it does, the global World Wide Web does create that avenue for us to search in different ways. Not everything out there is true. So if you're listening out there, don't let Google be your doctor.
This is true.
That is not what we're trying to say here.
There's still the buyer beware.
So as we're wrapping up things today, Dr. Carly, I have two kind of like last questions. One, when we open our mind, I think you've already talked a little bit about this, but when we open our mind and our neural pathways and our body, it's basically, especially our nervous system, because I know you work a lot with that with your patients. Do you think that the DNA has this possibility to be, charged in a different way, to be open? Now, I think there's a difference between what I'm going to say here. It's not like a quick pathway, because it's not like a quick solution. But when we change the patient's ability to receive, so to speak, open up their body's ability, do you think that then enables the body to have a quicker road of healing?
Absolutely. I think that we become what we practice, in a sense. And it took me many decades to find my first level of healing. When I arrived it was the summer of 2020, and I was actually getting used to and getting comfortable about being in an able body without any chronic disease, which was disarming because I'd never known it before. I'd only had that for a few months, but I had been practicing it for many years at that point. I really found the doctor that made all the difference for me about 8 years ago. And so when I suffered from another inflammatory traumatic brain injury in August of 2020, I am still on the road to recovery, but I am 4 months in and much further along than I was than the 7 years it took me previously once I finally started working with the same kind of care. The body starts to remember. It has those pathways, and maybe they've gotten a little overgrown. Maybe there's a little bit of a thicket that has shown up and you need a guide to help you through, but you've been here before. And so healing becomes easier because your expectations now start to match a memory. And that is part of what unlocks a whole different world.
Oh, that's so true. I love the cellular memory discussion. We could have that one a whole nother podcast for sure. Yeah. And you're right on with that. It's like when we open up the ability for our body to have one experience, the next time we have it, it's so much easier for our body to remember what that healing looked like, what it ignited within us, and what empowered our body in that place of healing. And so it does allow our patients to have this, I don't like the word like speed or quick, or just more knowledge within the body, more ability.
Yeah, it's a familiar path to go on again. And I see this time and time again on my table, that the first time that a patient needs to learn to use their muscles and use their bodies differently, it is a tough slog through, I don't even know what you're talking about. I can't feel it. And you have to even develop the language for feeling and interoception, what's going on inside of your body. But once you have done that, you don't have to do that all over again for the next one and the next one.
Right.
You get to build on that knowledge of experience, and it does tend to go faster. Still requires work, but it goes faster.
Thank God, because it would be exhausting if we had to start like from ground zero over and over again. Like a rocket ship. Exactly. Groundhog's Day. Oh, okay. So Dr. Carly, one fun question as we're wrapping things up. If you had an unlimited budget right now, what would you do to make the biggest impact on the planet?
I would, if I had an unlimited budget, I would invest it in the schools and subsidize, and I'm not a business person despite being an entrepreneur, but subsidize food and movement as a priority place of learning. That when we can engage in our days with fun and play and have a body that is well fueled, then these little kiddos are going to just be the most amazing little sponges. And I think that's the place to start.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great. I love that one. Ding, you got it. That's a great one. Yeah, it's a huge place. Our children they're going to be our planet when we're not here anymore. They're in charge. We have to support them. They're going to
make them strong and well nourished so they can take care of me in my old age.
Right. But it's true. They need to have that good nourishment and healthy food, healthy movement, more PE, more exercise outside, all of that good stuff like you talked about. So Dr. Carly, where can people find you? And I know you have a great little promotion or a freebie that people can find when they sign up for your newsletter. So talk about that. Talk about how people can find you. And we didn't even mention your new book that's coming out, but please, I know we'll have to have you back when your book comes out, but talk a little bit about that too as we're wrapping up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I have a podcast myself. You can actually, Dr. Lulu is our first episode of 2022. Kick this year off. So you can hear the other half of this conversation, but it's called Healing Ground Movement. And so you can find me at healinggroundmovement.com, where you'll see the entire catalog of all of our episodes talking about health and wellness, very much in the vein of this podcast here. When you go to that website, you can sign up for our newsletter and receive a freebie on rest, recovery, and rejuvenation. Simple ways, simple lifestyle medicine to start preparing your body to be able to heal and recover, coming out of fight, flight, and freeze, and into a place where you can receive and change, because we can't grow and be in panic at the same time. It's just not going to work that way.
No.
No. And on that newsletter too, you will stay at the forefront of information surrounding my book that is coming out. It's called Fortunately, Unfortunately. I am hoping to have that be available in fall of 2022. So this year.
That's great.
And if you've enjoyed the teasers of my health history, it's a part memoir about a real big journey to recovery and healing and a lot of alternative medicines. But I think the part that I am most excited to share with your listeners and with my readers is that it's also a discussion of our cultural givens around health. And very often stories like mine look very heroic, but they look that way because we often have to go uphill against a bunch of roadblocks and really pave the way. And that's where the hero's journey is. And so understanding our cultural givens around health and what we may have created limitations for ourselves in that way, I think can be a really eye-opening change. So that's really what the book is about.
That's great. And how can they find you on social media?
Social media. So our most active is on Instagram. We are Healing Ground Movement. We're also on Facebook as well. You can say hi to me on either one of those pages at Healing Ground Movement for the podcast.
Great.
And if you're a Denver local, I'd love to see you in my office as well. If you're looking for a chiropractor.
Yeah, that's right. I'll have to come and visit.
Please do.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Carly. It's been so fun to have you on the show today. And I look forward to having you back on to talk about your book sometime, hopefully in the fall, maybe with a book launch. We're going to have a live cast for that. That would be super fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Thanks again.